In a world that never stands still, where stories break in seconds and moments shape history, one station keeps you connected to your nation, to the continent, to the world.
From breaking news to powerful stories, from business and politics to culture, lifestyle and entertainment, we inform, we inspire, we keep you ahead.
This is more than television. This is your window to everywhere that matters.
ANEKE TV. Move with the world.
Many thanks for staying with us on the week in retrospect, and here I will serve you the news headlines and the debates, the analysis that follows.
All right, we go straight to today's newspaper and the headlines. We're looking at Punch, the headline in Punch newspaper, which is talking about Nigerians lose millions in dashed Umrah dreams. Nigerians lose millions in dashed Umrah dreams. And then we go over to the Nation's newspaper, or the Weekend Trust, where we have Tinubu's men, rise of the loyalists. Tinubu's men, rise of the loyalists. And we go over to the Vanguard, which says Iran behind terrorism in Nigeria. Israeli ambassador, Iran behind terrorism in Nigeria. Then we go over to the Nation newspaper, which says Borno abductions don't succumb to fear, Tinubu tells Nigerians. Borno abductions don't succumb to fear, Tinubu tells Nigeria. Now we go over to the Guardian, Weekend Guardian. It says food inflation, fears resonate over Middle East crisis. Food inflation, fears resonate over Middle East crisis. Now we check the Saturday Sun, which says more trouble for Nigerians. More trouble for Nigerians. But we're going to take Punch as our first newspaper for today, which says Nigerians lose millions in dashed Umrah dreams. Nigeria lose millions in dashed Umrah dreams. Yes, Mr. Uche.
All right. Looking at this headline, Nigeria is a very religious nation. Yeah, and as you somehow know it, that we're having Ramadan and Lent in the same period, being that the two dominant religions in Nigeria on a spiritual exercise of self-purging and focus on their Mecca, and in the one thing that is quite peculiar with Nigerians is that being religious people will see to it that we practice our religion. In fact, we wear our religion on our faces. And when it comes to religion in Nigeria, it's a very big obvious divide. There's a very big and disobvious divide amongst the people, being that we are quite particular about our religion. And then there's no making much emphasis without letting you know that in as much as we value our religion and wear it on our faces, we always want to observe the religious practices and instructions, and that's to speak to taking time for pilgrimage. In the Christian faith, they usually would visit the Holy Land in Jerusalem, where they want to see the happenings or the relics or things left behind from the days of the scriptures, as is reported in the Bible. People still go to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem to pray. People move on to the Sea of Bethsaida. People go to see a lot of these places that they read in the scripture, and they see that when you are able to do this, is somehow strengthened in faith. The same thing is replicable with our other brothers in the Muslim faith, that they observe Hajj, which is stipulated in the scripture that one should be able to undertake Hajj in their lifetime. And you see Nigerians are not quite exceptional to this. They always want to observe that instruction, that in this period of Ramadan there is a lot of preparation towards Umrah, which is the Hajj that will be performed when we are in this Ramadan, and before we get to break the fast and celebrate, there is Umrah, Hajj, and a lot of Nigerians have made preparations. There are people who have started this preparation all their life. They've lived all their life for this moment.
Wow.
So people have prepared. invested their life savings. Some have taken loans to prepare for this year's Hajj. And I tell you, a lot of persons have gotten their visas. They've obtained visas. Some have booked their flight. Some have gone as far as, making accommodation reservations in hotels where they will stay. And all that, seems threatened with the escalation in the Middle East at this point in time. So when the Punch is telling you that Nigerians lose millions in that Umrah dreams, there's no better way to put it. Because when you take stock of what must have been invested into this year's Umrah in observing the Hajj, you will see that there is billions. It may go beyond millions that is being estimated. It may run into billions. I have seen preparation over time where people prepare for this Hajj. You see, they are, like I did mention, people spend their life savings to see that they are able to observe Hajj. You see, I've witnessed where people are able to sell off all their belongings, where people empty their shops to be able to go on Hajj. So people are really investing into this practice. And when you come to Nigeria, is a show of sometimes affluence. And is a bargain and bragging point to say that you've been to Hajj, that you've gone to Mecca. So people spend, they spare no expenses when it comes to Hajj. And I tell you, you may, where we are domiciled here in Enugu, you may not understand the import of it. When we speak to pilgrimages, for example, those of us on our Christian faith, the faith is such that, yes, you could and believe that you can access God without any encumbrances on you that you must go to the Holy Land or you must visit Jerusalem. But in the other faith, in Islam, you understand, is one of the things every faithful Muslim intends to fulfill in their lifetime. So people, start planning from day one. I tell you, there are people who have started planning for this year's Hajj 2 years back. If you should traverse from, let's say, move from Abuja through Kaduna, through Kano, through Jigawa, you understand what I'm telling you. I've seen where people had to sleep days outside waiting for flight that will take them to Hajj. So people spend not just resources, they spend energy, they spend time, they go through horrendous experience to be able to observe the Hajj. So when one is beginning to quantify what is invested into Hajj, you will see that there is a lot that is at stake beyond the millions that were being told. And due to the fact that it's a religious exercise, we may not begin to look at it at what Nigeria is losing in terms of the finance, the foreign exchange that goes into this preparation, because people will have to source foreign currencies. You have to spend foreign currencies when you're on Hajj. So then you pay for accommodation, you pay for your air ticket. So this is a humongous amount that leaves Nigeria whenever during this period. But we don't look at all that. What we'll take a look at is the salvation of the soul, the renewal of our mind that comes from the performance of this Hajj. But this year's own is now threatened, heavily threatened with the escalations in the Middle East. When this escalation started in the Middle East, we were expecting that it would be like a police action or a similar case that we were witnessing in Venezuela, where the Americans went in and came back with the president, Maduro, and brought him to the United States for prosecution to face charges of his crimes. But in this instance, it was not same. But however, analysts did expect that it will be a quick action, it will be a go in and come out, but the whole thing is lingering and is beginning to affect every other aspects of human life beyond the Middle East. And you can see to it that yes, it's beginning to dash people's lifetime dreams. And I wonder how these individuals, if at all they will recoup anything from what they've invested, that there's no way they are going to recoup all. But one thing is certain, I do not see the situation where people would embark on this year's Umrah as planned. Is all threatened by the escalation in the Middle East.
Yeah, for me, I feel that there should be available means for refund for some certain things, like for the flights. For people who has booked this flight on time, they should be available means, of refunding the amount which they pay, and some places didn't read the book. I think there should be safety precautions when these certain things happen. Yeah, people should always, the company who are being, booked should make some
yeah, there will be
available.
refunds, but the fact remains that irrespective of refunds, there are charges involved. So there's no way you can recoup everything. I've heard people who lament that they spent upwards of 13 million and above in preparation for this year's Umrah. And when we talk about refund, there's no way you're going to recoup all that you've spent into preparation for this Hajj, right? There may be refunds. Airlines are open to deferring your ticket to other dates. They are open to, refunds, but these refunds, there's no way you get the whole amount, and some are taxable. Even when you're trying to either reroute your trip or ask for refund, the processes involved, there are still taxes that you will pay. And again, some of them may stand not to recoup their money at all if they do not start the process of wanting to cancel the ticket on time. Then the airline may not be able to refund you all. The same thing is applicable with the hotel. Remember that when you've made a reservation, for example, somebody who have made a reservation since last month or last 2 months, in preparation for this year's Umrah, and all of a sudden we're seeing the crisis in Iran and the Middle East as a whole, then you begin to want to cancel. The hotel may want to make some charges because they have made that reservation. There could be other people who equally would want to occupy similar space at that same time. So even if they are to refund you, you may not recoup everything. And besides that, people, invest on things that they will take along with them. There are those who go with a little of food from here that they would eat when they are on Hajj and other things. So there are things that you can't recover, and when I was speaking, I speak to the fact that in as much as, yes, we talk about millions, it may run into beyond several millions to billions, when you take into account the number of people that embark on Hajj annually, right? And so there are irrecoverable losses involved. So there are millions at stake here, and there are indeed the hopes that will be dashed, is irrecoverable.
Whenever people say they go for religious pilgrimage, I asked, can you made a mention of two things. Yeah, when I got you, you said people, sell off things, their whole belongings, everything they have to be able to, have a successful trip to this religious pilgrimage. In that certain situation, I think it's a religious extreme in as much as want to attend a feast very important like that. I think selling off everything you have to be able to attend is really right.
Anyway, perspectives are different and it's allowed. But one thing, though not a practicing Muslim myself, but one thing I tell you is that when you look at the doctrine, there are things that are required of you, and I did tell you that is one of the requirements where every faithful Muslim would want to embark on a Hajj at least once in a lifetime. You understand? So, and given the religious disposition of Nigerians in both divide, everybody wants to be able to at least for once in their lifetime embark on Hajj, beyond the social accolades that is attached to people who have been on Hajj. It gives you this bragging right, and that's why I cited the fact that you may not be able to comprehend when you're outside perhaps the northern enclave. You begin to understand the importance that is attached to Umrah.
I'm coming from the dimension that it will affect the poor ones, in the sense that their mentality of them going to this pilgrimage, when they don't have it, there will be amounted, this will amount pressure on them.
Yeah, there are pressures involved, but like I did tell you, it's a matter of perspective. These ones do not see it as suffering. It's interpreted as sacrifice because it's a religious obligation that they are embarking on. So they do not count the losses. They do not look at it as suffering. So they are willingly, and I tell you, I have witnessed, I have seen people I know on a personal ground who have, sold off virtually everything that is in their shop to be able to, undertake the Hajj. So they do not see it from a perspective of suffering. And there are as well, well-to-do individuals who, would sponsor others to, to embark on Hajj as well. And there's equally government sponsorship where governments help those who are embarking on Hajj. We used to subsidize these things over the years. I cannot speak to this moment, but we used to subsidize, and there is a serious clamor by every faithful Muslim to be able to embark on Hajj. So in all, when you are around, for example, Kano, Kaduna, Jigawa, Bauchi, and the rest of the states, you will understand that it's not seen as suffering. It's seen and interpreted as sacrifice, upon which the reward, Allah would reward every obedient faithful.
Now, I'm coming from a depth dimension that this thing can incite people going outside, going through enemies to be able to achieve this. That's inciting danger to the public.
Anyway, we do not see it as danger, especially when you are in a Muslim-dominated environment. We look up to it, with relish. It's something that they take joy from doing. Yes, it's human nature to want to do everything, to be able to, when you set your mind on going on Hajj, but I do not see them endangering any other person. But if you're speaking to the human nature that would want to, perhaps that may be a subject of a conversation or study in other times. But if you may take, a trip, for example, to Jigawa State, to Bauchi, you would understand, the zeal, the relish with which people, welcome the period for them to go on Hajj. And I tell you, it's a huge industry on its own, the pilgrimage, the Hajj. When you look at the number of states that make up northern Nigeria, and northern Nigeria is dominated by the Muslim faith, and you see the number of persons who are prepared to go on Hajj. Wow, you would understand that there's a whole lot of resources, that people are enthusiastic, people would sacrifice, any level of comfort to see that they observed it at least once in a lifetime. And we do not speak to the well-to-do in society who go on Hajj some more than once in a year, and they see it as a religious practices. There are those who are already, in Mecca observing Ramadan, waiting for the crescent moon when the Ramadan will be over, and then we'll do the Salah and all that. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Then we go over to the Nation newspaper. The Nation newspaper says, Borno abductions, don't succumb to fear. Tinubu tell Nigerians. Borno abduction, don't succumb to fear. Tinubu tell Nigerians.
Okay.
So,
all right. So I'm looking at this headline from the Nation newspaper, that in Borno abduction, don't succumb to fear, Tinubu tells Nigerians. It speaks to the, the cross of the issue that we've been all about. There's no, even the deaf and dumb in Nigeria are quite aware of the security challenges that we face as a nation. Even people who've departed this nation, I'm quite, I will not be surprised if you go to wake up Murtala Mohammed from the grave, or Lieutenant Sani Abacha. They will indeed tell you about the security challenges that we face now as a nation. And even though they will be surprised that this is happening in Nigeria, that they left behind, but I am quite sure that when they are woken up now, they are very much inundated with these security issues. And having said that, it becomes even more worrisome that as we speak about it and we hear rhetorics and government efforts to curb insecurity, these things continue unabated. It's as if that the the insurgents, the bandits, or by whatever name we call them, are becoming more emboldened, to go against the Nigerian state. It was just in the news the other day that over 100 women were abducted in Borno State. And beyond that, we are seeing myriads of killings when you traverse the north central and you move up to other parts of the north as well. There are killings. Insecurity has become, a watchword that even a toddler who is learning to, pronounce their first syllables should be conversant with in Nigeria, because whenever you go to the media, even on your handset, the first issues and dominant headlines you see has to do with insecurity. Having said that, now hearing this word from Mr. President, when he was addressing members of the security forces, the armed forces and other security agencies in the State House in Abuja during the breakfast dinner that they had. He was speaking to this whole issue around Ngoshe, where people were abducted, residents were attacked and abducted as at Wednesday. And then when you look further, you see that other surrounding communities were not spared, like Konduga, Marte, Jakana, Menok, and the rest of them around Borno State were not spared. And this speaks to the fact that we are beginning to have a lot of ungoverned space where these bandits are able to come in and operate freely, and get back to their base. And the question arises, are we doing? However, it's not out of place, like I did mention, for Mr. President to come to give assurance, and he's telling the members of the security community that they should not, succumb to fear. And fear is one thing that these bandits, these insurgents would want to instill, not just on the communities around, but equally on the security forces that are combating this issue. And if you look at the way their modus operandi in this period, you see that they become more emboldened. They put out tweets and videos of where they are punishing those who are kidnapped victims in their domain. And that one thing they intend to achieve with that is to instill fear in the people and even the soldiers. It's such that you will be so much afraid what happens to you if you fall victim at the battlefront and you happen to be kidnapped. Beyond the kinetic battles involved, that this is equally a psychological warfare as well, on who has upper hand and control in instilling fear on the people. But beyond the rhetorics, and I tell you, while I do not in all, say the government is not trying, but it is within the purview of Mr. President to reassure Nigerians, reassure the security agencies that the government is behind them, that we should not be scared, no matter what, that we should not succumb to non-state actors. We should not let them control the narrative, and that the state, is behind us. And when you go forward to listening to Mr. President, he says all efforts and that his government will stop at nothing to see that the whole issue of insecurity is, brought to the barest minimum. And then when you speak to these efforts, one can attend to the fact that the collaboration with the United States government, beyond the bombing that we witnessed in Sokoto in December 2025, that the U.S., military have boots on ground in Nigeria, but what we do not know at this point in time is that if those boots will be combative, if they are combatants or just intelligence personnel here on intelligence gathering. But be that as it may, one cannot, overemphasize the fact that there has to be renewed effort to see that issues of insecurity is confronted head on. We cannot continue to yield an inch of any Nigerian space to these insurgents, to these bandits. We need to curb it. We need to see to it that it is curbed. Over the days they are becoming, they are growing more and more emboldened, and there is need for all states actors in terms of security agencies and the government to expedite action. There's been much rhetoric, and beyond the treaties that we've entered into, For example, the president was with the president of Turkey, and he was in Turkey where they reached some bilateral agreements, and Turkey has offered to help Nigerians, especially in letting us have access to drones. You know, Turkey is one of the countries that are renowned in the drone technology as well. So if we can have access to all this equipment, and the only way you can assess, you know, that these equipment are productive is the outcome from the fields, the success stories that will be heard. And these success stories is not such that will be, you know, spread on the pages of newspaper, but account of these people in the community who are terrorized by these bandits, people who can no longer go to their farms, people who are in IDP camps. If they are able to return back to their homes, if they are able to return back to their villages, until then we can speak to this whole kinetic efforts producing results. But I am, you know, I've always been on the group of people who's been calling for us to have what I call a security conference, where we begin to analyze the critical issues that is embodying this insecurity in Nigeria. You know, just yesterday we were talking about, you know, reports where communities, we are talking about the modus operandi of these insurgents, and that live among the people, how they make use of border communities, you know, as a hiding place, and threaten even the traditional rulers who cannot point them out to the people. So we need to come, reharmonize, sit down and discuss this issue and marshal out the Nigerian plan on how we will tackle insecurity. You know, I'm of the view that despite whatever bilateral agreement that we have with other nations, despite our collaboration with the government of the United States, that all that is good. And if we bring all the equipments in the world into Nigeria, one thing I tell you, that insecurity in Nigeria will be, you know, dealt with by only Nigerians. When you rely on expatriates, on foreigners, I tell you, they would go. But when you find a Nigerian solution to this issue, then you may begin to see and have some respite when it comes to issue of insurgency. And one of such issue, you know, when I remember the period towards 2023, when this Mr. President and some other aspirants were being interviewed, I listened beyond the issue, you know, of the carrot and the kinetic approach. People were talking about amnesty, where they declare days to engage these insurgents and find out what is truly their grounds. You know, a number of times we tend to give you the coloration of religious fights, those who are fighting for their faith, who wants to introduce or propagate their own, you know, doctrine of Islam or other faiths on the people. But beyond that, there could be other reasons, you know, and we are just alluding to religious faith. So when we sit down, we'll be able to look at this issue holistically and are able to marshal out the Nigerian plan on how to combat insurgency and terrorism, kidnapping and all that. And one of such moves for me is why I commend the moves around state police. Until we have state police, I tell you, we may continue to daily see kidnapping and killings of communities. Because I tell you one thing, that the Nigerian police, the federal police as is presently constituted, are overwhelmed. You know, Nigeria, look at a population of over 250 million people and counting, and what's the number of our policemen? We do not have up to 300,000 policemen, you know, to check and watch over a population of over 250 million people. We are under-policed, and these are issues that we need to quicken our pace about if we are serious about confronting issues of insurgency, kidnapping and banditry and the likes of it. But beyond that, I commend the present administration for their efforts in seeing that this issue, you know, is curtailed. But beyond that, there's still room for more action. More is needed, and it should go beyond rhetorics.
You said a lot of things, and you know, centralization of police has done more harm, like you said, than good. But you know, when you say centralization, like, you know, when you are operating on the federal system of government, I think it will be very, very hard to centralize this government. Moving over to the insecurity in the north, now there has been numerous calls for resolution of this conflict and knowing about, but I feel like there is a need for the government to come into know that it's not just something of religious conflict or anything, because numerous of these soldiers that fund this war has all gotten one injury or they are dead, but I feel like there's more in terms of now, I've been talking to a colleague one time, and we were discussing this thing, insurgency in the north, and he made me understand that the part reason why the government hasn't faced this is because it's for him it's a political issue, and for this thing to be handled, it's not something you need foreign equipment such as drones and equipment to watch out. They have to be, even when this equipment are being funded and being brought, they must be, the information must be leaked out to these attackers out there, and still the continuous combat of this thing will continue. Then there has to be reshuffling of this thing, having a way that I think bringing in security agency and trying to identify and trying to know who amongst them is the person leaking out this information, because I feel like the major thing they have to combat first is finding the mole in the mist, because there's no way these people will know the in and out of this security agency if nobody is giving out the information out there, because this is the major thing they have to combat before helping going ahead to equip themselves in this electrical gadgets to locate the actual location of this bandit and people orchestrating this event. So that's just the major thing for me.
All right, that's quite apt, but when you take a look at the the intricacies of this fight, it's not a conventional fight where you have the Nigerian forces in one corner and you have the other group at one corner, like Arsenal and Man U when they are playing. It's more like a guerrilla warfare, and like I did point out, it may be difficult to differentiate. Like when you go into a community and you want to mop up, you may not be able to differentiate the insurgents from the real inhabitants of that community. Having said that, there's been over time allegedly the issue of saboteurs who leak information, and knowing the military quite well, I know that there is continuous process of being able to whittle out spies or informers from amongst their midst. But these are equally, when you talk about spying and all that, is still a tool in warfare. You understand why you have your intelligence network trying to obtain information on the operations of your adversaries. You should equally be aware that your adversaries are on top gear, wanting to gain upper hand, know how you plan and what you want to do, what you are planning to do. But be that as it may, remember that over time there's been a president, for example, who did at one point shout out that his government has been infiltrated by these members of this other divide. You understand? But having said that, for over a long period of time, there's not been a substantiated one publicly where we were being shown that this person has been caught, though there are cases under investigation. Through Back Channel 1 gets to know, yes, that people are kept in detention, interrogated, because they've had access and communication with these people at the other divide, and that has to do with the leakage of information. But like you rightly pointed out, if we do not manage our information very well, it may be difficult to defeat the insurgents. And then as to reshuffling, there is only consistent and always reshuffling. Mr. President did reshuffle the security architecture recently, leading to the appointment of retired General Musa, as the defense minister at the moment. So they keep reshuffling and all that. But one thing is obvious, that we do not need to rest until we see that we bring this issue to the barest minimum. There's no country in the world where there are no security challenges. But what matters is that you're able to bring it to the barest minimum, where the state is more than a 95% control, and when they happen, it doesn't happen, at this magnitude that we are seeing it happen in Nigeria, where bandits could come into a community and they're able to move over 50 persons at once. So, should not be allowed to continue. But be that as it may, we equally continue to commend the sacrifice of our gallant men and women of the security forces who have been fighting, to see that we go to bed with our eyes closed. They pay the ultimate sacrifice and all that. And that reminds me that, yes, while we talk about these things, that part of the things that should be paramount is to see to it that their welfare is important and taken into serious account as well.
Okay. All right. Moving over to the next newspaper, where we have The Guardian, which says, the Guardian newspaper says, food inflation fears resonate over Middle East crisis. Food inflation fears resonate over Middle East crisis.
Getting to this issue, I think I was talking about this, about the whole Benue crisis happening there. They regarded as the food basket of the nation. Now, with the whole insurgency and insecurity happening there, where people are being killed, my fear was well explained there, because I think the continuous adoption of this, food circulation in this country will be very deterred, and people will now find it hard to transport, food to, vital states in Nigeria. And if, food scarcity is just one thing that, if a nation, lack and have that, there will be a lot of emergency. Because I don't know, what can we do without this? It's not like other states cannot produce what they eat, but we're talking about the quantity which can sustain a particular state. Now they need the help of others to be able to balance the whole flow of food around the nation. So right now, when the food basket of the nation is in trouble, I'm talking about deep trouble. It affects the other states, and it's not going to be an easy one in Nigeria now, because imagine fighting insecurity and fighting also food scarcity. This is just two major problems we have. But I think food scarcity is more worse, because we need this. This is something we need to use to survive. Now, combating crime and violence is on a different side. You can actually find a way around it a little. But now, when you are, they say, a hungry man is a hungry man. So this is just something that should be looked in. If not, if it elude this stage now, I think things will escalate.
All right. Well, that is one of the points. But I think coming from the Middle East side, that's the tension in the Middle East, U.S. and Israeli and the Iran tensions that has escalated over the week. You would see that the major place where they used to ship food, Strait of Hormuz, where they used to ship things down to, spreading it, moving it around the world, is under serious tension right now. And looking at the Nigerian Consumers Capital Index, which was released just in January, you will see that there has been a lot of improvement. There has been a lot of predictions too around that. And when we look at it from this side, coming from the aspect of the crude oil, the issues regarding the oil that has been, coming up, how, Iran actually has a lot of holdings in the world's crude oil. So the tensions and the escalations and the things that are happening around that region has really dealt with the food prices, and there's possible increase in the coming days by the propagation and by the setting up things of professionals. So this would actually affect how we buy and actually also how we sell, because there's something Mr. Uche said the other day. He said that if we are doing everything we are doing and the common man doesn't take benefits from it. For instance, if you go to the market, the one bushel of rice, one bushel of beans, whatever it is, if the common man understands those things, do you get those things that are basic in the market? So with this whole issue around crude oil, around you can see Dangote within 4 days has had a margin of 200 something naira in their oil price index. And also you would see that we are also talking about the other side of oil now, where we are having more other people are selling about 890 something, other people are selling 920. So with this whole thing happening here and there, you would see that there is something around that will have an issue as regards to food, as regards to what we are eating, as regards to what we are going to have in our country. Yes.
All right. So that's quite apt, speaking to food, which is quite important, and then linking it up with the issues at hand. From the vited point where you're coming from, looking at the importance of food, especially food security for a nation, is quite important. And we've grappled with insecurity, people are not being able to go to farm over time, especially linking it to Benue State. We thought to be the food basket of the nation, where many people are in IDP camps, they cannot go back home, they can't go to farm. It is a lot of questions to food security. And then coming with the happenings, like he just rightly pointed out, the happening in the Middle East, stands in a very big way to derail the stability that we've been gaining. There's no doubt that if this crisis continues in the Middle East as well, that it may reverse the inflection gains that Nigeria has recorded in the past. And given the important role that Iran plays in the pricing of world oil, especially as it has to do with the control around the Strait of Hormuz, which is the linkage of about more than 20-30% of world oil consumption in the world, that every oil tankers has to pass through that Strait of Hormuz. It plays a very big importance in the world. And one thing, when we're talking about the consequences of the escalations in the Middle East, we're talking about how it will impact Nigeria. And like you rightly said, that Dangote refinery had to increase gantry price, and that has in effect affected prices at gas stations all over the country. There's been tremendous increment immediately as a result of this war. Now Nigeria is a regulated market, and Dangote is pricing in US dollars, and the Brent crude is getting up to $82. Dangote needed to reverse pricing as well. And given the nature and the way Nigeria is operating, that vehicular movement is the major modus of transportation in Nigeria, there's no doubt that once you increase the price of premium motor spirit, that will have an immediate impact on the living conditions of Nigerians, especially when it has to do with transportations of food as well. Having said that, you realize that with the whole escalation in the Middle East, that you see that freight fares, when it has to do with importation and all that, would equally escalate, will go high, and that leads to the cost of importation. We are still import-dependent nation, where we depend on the importers to bring in a lot of what we consume in Nigeria. So there's no doubt that prices will now begin to skyrocket. And then beyond that, when you come back to Nigeria, I've told you, when the price of transportation increases in Nigeria, rest assured that food prices in Nigeria will equally go high. When the woman that is selling at Obete, for example, or in main market in Onitsha, has to pay extra 20 naira for bus fare, be rest assured that will impact the mode of gari in the market, or the cup of price of beans equally in the market. So it translates and transcends far and above, and that stands in a bigger way to drain the little gain that's been made just while we're praying that this whole crisis in the Middle East doesn't escalate further, because if it continues to escalate, there's no doubt that the Nigerian people will pay, heavily for it, while our government is happy, raking in more dollars. We may not need to borrow to fund our budget, being that our benchmark is around 64 point something US dollars, the budget. Now the oil is around $82 per barrel. So the government will have more money in its kitty to fund the budget and in the reserve as well. But in the long run, it's a deregulated market. There's no subsidy available. So people will have to pay. So there will be really, really negative impact on the people, and it stands to derail the inflationary gains that this administration has recorded. But I am quite aware that over time these governments have expert advisors, expert economy managers that may find other ways to see that we're able to wrangle out of all this. But in all, it's not a good one for a country like Nigeria that is import dependent. The pricing around the world, the crisis in the Middle East, this geopolitical crisis will have a negative, impact in Nigeria overall, especially where the masses are involved.
All right, thank you very much. We go on a short break. When we return, we're going to continue with the Week in Retrospect here on ANEKE TV. Stay tuned.
In a world that never stands still, where stories break in seconds and moments shape history, one station keeps you connected to your nation, to the continent, to the world.
From breaking news to powerful stories, from business and politics to culture, lifestyle and entertainment, we inform, we inspire, we keep you ahead.
This is more than television. This is your window to everywhere that matters.
ANEKE TV. Move with the world.
Back still on Retrospect here on ANEKE TV. So we go over to the newspapers just for the weekend. We're starting with Monday, and we're going to go through the newspapers, and then we'll stay on one or two of it. So here on Monday we have US-Iran in Vanguard newspaper. We have US-Israel wipe out Iran's top military brass. US-Israel wipe out Iran's top military brass. Then we have in the Punch, 2027 polls won't be 100% perfect. ANEK chairman warns 2027 polls won't be perfect. ANEK chairman warns. Now we have the Nation. ICPC recovers wire taping equipment from El Rufai. ICPC recovers wire taping equipment from El Rufai. Now in the Daily Sun we have primaries. ADC, PDP, others await implosion in APC. Primaries, ADC, PDP, others await implosion in APC. Now, in the Daily Trust, we have Iran strike fallout. Shiite protests erupt in North. Iran strike fallout. Shiite protests erupt in the North.
All right, so we'll quickly take a look at Daily Trust, where we're being told that Iran strike fallout, Shiites protest erupts in North. Now, with the crisis in the Middle Eastern region, that we have people who share similar faith and believe that they are intertwined in faith with the state of Iran, especially speaking to the Islamic movement in Nigeria, who, over time we've had reports that they are being funded by the Ayatollah from Iran. So when you see the crisis in the Middle East that escalated with Israel, US, aligning to decimate the Khomeini and other cabinet members of the Ayatollah in Iran, one may not be surprised to see that there are individuals who have taken to the street to protest this cleansing, as Israel would want us to believe, the cleansing, of the axis of evil, by taking control and seeing it that this government in Iran is taking out once and for all, and for the Iranians to take over their government or their state as they were, engineered by President Trump while he was making a speech and speaking to this whole strike or escalation in the Middle East. But coming down to Nigeria, these Islamic movements over time have protested when there are similar issues, when there are crises in Iran and some other places, because like I did tell you, they share similitude in their form of Islam they practice. So when we woke up on Monday and saw people on the street, usually on blacks, one may not be, so surprised if you are inundated with the activities of the Shiite movement in Nigeria. And do you remember that the leader of the Shiite movement, El Zazaki, has been incarcerated over time, even despite some court rulings mandating the Nigerian government to release him. But for security reasons, the government said that they can't release him, that he poses a serious security, threat if he's allowed to go home. You remember the crisis between the Nigerian government and the Shiite movement over time and all that. So this, it continued to, one was expecting that beyond just normal protest that it would end there. But due to they command a huge number of faithfuls and followers, one is not surprised that this protests would move beyond cities like Kano, Jigawa, Bauchi, and to Kaduna. And you may not be surprised if you see them moving even up to the state capital, Abuja, to register their protests. These are people who over time have shown this courage, if one may use the word courage, to protest on issues they believe in. And what we ask is that as they protest, it should be them exercising their constitutional given right to free will and freedom of association and assembly and protesting. It shouldn't infringe on the rights of other Nigerian citizens who are, going about their businesses to move freely. Let it be civil, let it be in accordance to the law. And I think that will be all for this.
Okay, so we check on Tuesday, newspaper headlines on Tuesday. Daily Sun says, aftermath of US-Iran-Israel war, crude oil price hits roof. Now, in the Punch newspaper, it says, US alerts citizens in Nigeria as Shiite protest rocks Lagos. Now, in The Guardian, we have drug shortage, funding cuts put 100 million Nigerians, NTD gains at risk. Now we have in the Vanguard, Middle East war, no distress calls yet from Nigerians in Iran. Now we have in The Nation, executive order on remittances. A Dune panel swings into action.
All right, let's quickly run to the Sun newspaper. The headline there is crude oil prices hit roof. We kept speaking to these issues throughout the week, and it's not a hidden thing, to anybody that with the escalation in the Middle East, that prices of crude was going to skyrocket, and we've seen it. It has gotten as high as $84 before it's trickled down a little to where it is now. And as we were speaking, as of yesterday, it got to $82 already. So that escalation indeed would see to an increment in the world pricing of crude, Brent crude as well, because Iran, we've said it, controls the Strait of Hormuz, which accounts for a good number of the total world consumption of oil, being that the tankers, this barrage and tankers will have to cross through the Strait of Hormuz to be able to access other areas of the world. So it's an important, important map or area in world transportation of oil. So that is not surprising to anyone that the price of crude has gone so high, and it's beginning to have impact on nations around the world. And then moving over to the Punch headline, where we are seeing that as a result of the Israel-Iran tension, the US is alerting their citizens in Nigeria, due to Shii's protests that was spoken about. That's what to tell you how important the US places the life of their citizens, wherever they are. And the embassy over time continue to give, state of security alertness to their citizens and national wherever they are. They keep giving information. There's recent release where they were telling their nationals not to travel to certain areas, that these areas may not be safe for you to go to, that they should stick to perhaps the Abuja, Lagos and all that. So this is something they do, periodically, giving every US citizen in Nigeria information on how and where not to go. So that, tells you the premium with which the US government places on the life of their citizens. And contrary to that, when you move further, you are seeing in the Vanguard newspaper that the Nigerian government is telling you that there is no distress call from Nigerians yet in Iran, as at the same day that the US government is sending, security reports aloud to their citizens. We are waiting for our nationals who are in the crisis-laden region to call out first before we begin to look at how we may help in evacuating them. So that contrast speaks to a lot on the whole issues. But in summary, one thing that is obvious here is the underlying issue, the Middle East crisis.
Yes.
The war in Iran is impacting and affecting a lot of the goings and happenings around the world, and it's taking a heavy impact, a heavy toll on Nigeria. Our government, may be happy, smiling, as we are meeting our beyond our budget and all that. But in all, there is, like we just spoke to, there is the other side of it, the impact on the people.
All right. So we just go over to Wednesday's newspaper, which says, in the nation, Nigerians in Middle East send distress calls as government halts pilgrimage. And then over to Daily Sun, fuel price rises. Now 937 naira per litre in Lagos, 975 naira in Abuja. Now in Daily Trust, APC congresses line up behind Tinubu. Now in the Punch, value-added tax hits record 1 trillion as new sharing. And this is all that we have in the newspaper headlines from Monday to Friday. Yes. All right. And then with that, we'll be signing off. And then, like we did speak to it, the issue of distress calls. After that report on Tuesday, by Wednesday, Nigerians in the Middle East now sent distress calls. Yes, Nigerians in Middle East send distress calls as government house pilgrimages. And we've spoken to the issue of people whose intention to perform the Umrah, is impacted. People are losing money and all that. But the distress call has finally come, and we are watching to see how our government responds to that. Though we know that some people were evacuated from Israel through Jordan back to Nigeria, but we're still watching because they were waiting for that distress call to come, and now it has finally come. So, I wonder how we'll be able to assist and evacuate people who are trapped in the Middle East at the moment, because as I am aware, the area is a no-fly zone for civilian flights at this moment. If you see anything up, it has to be a military grade planes moving around the vicinity who are engaging in combat or in surveillance operation. Be that as it may, we've spoken to the prices of the crude going high, and then speaking to the APC Congress, a line up behind Tinubu. What would one expect? You expect the whole of APC to stand on the mandate of the Mr. President. So we do not expect to see anything different from Abia to Adamawa to anywhere. Everyone and every state is lining up behind the mandate. We've seen the governors, the campaign, leaving their party that they used in getting into office to move to stand on the mandate of Mr. President. I, for one, I will be surprised to see that there are people, or there is a contender against Mr. President. So this, for me, is no surprise, and is not a newsworthy for me to hear that people are lining before or behind Mr. President, or that they are standing on his mandate. It's expected that around the 30 states that they control, that every one of such states that you have members of APC lining
behind Mr. President. What will be surprised to me is to hear that the ADC coalition, they are lining behind President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So that would be a bigger shock. But as it stands, is not surprising, and one would expect more alignment, more people standing behind Mr. President from the APC fold. And that's all for today on the Week in Retrospect.
All right, thank you very much. That's all for today in the Week in Retrospect. Remember, you can send us your comments, what you think, and how you are finding it out there on our social media platforms, across all social media platforms, of course, on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm Good Hope Chukuma. Thank you very much for watching.
All right, and Uche Osai. Stay tuned, stay informed till we come your way same time next week.
And I'm Gift to Buddha. Thank you.
Yeah, and we all are saying bye-bye.
Bye.
In a world that never stands still, where stories break in seconds and moments shape history, one station keeps you connected to your nation, to the continent, to the world.
From breaking news to powerful stories, from business and politics to culture, lifestyle and entertainment, we inform, we inspire, we keep you ahead.
This is more than television. This is your window to everywhere that matters.
ANEKE TV. Move with the world.